Hey, I'm Tony,
I'm Craig.
and we're coming to you from the corner of a pub.
As the sun was setting o'er the bright meadows of Sherman, a rebel hand set the head.
Okay, well, so I was listening to Peter Schiff on Joe Rogan's podcast recently. It was probably, for anyone that's interested in that interview, it's going to be Joe Rogan Experience number 1514. So in that, Schiff actually made some really good points about free market economics, and to the point that Rogan was even saying, I understand what you're saying, and I think that makes a lot of sense. That is when you put it that way, I agree completely, which is, it's a pretty different stance than what Rogan's expressed previously on the podcast, supporting, or at least he really liked Bernie Sanders. I don't know. I'm not sure if it was just as a person or if he believed that Bernie actually had some good ideas, which is a little scary. But Schiff did a great job of explaining a few points on there. And Rogan asked the question, well, what do you think it is? Why is it that socialism seems to have had a better marketing campaign? Not that there was a literal marketing campaign, but for some reason it's more attractive to people.
Oh yeah, it's the trendy thing right now.
But it's not just right now, because it has been before, right? So why is that? And it got me thinking of, okay, one, that actually another friend of mine just asked, why does this keep coming up? Why does it seem to be a positive thing that catches on with so many people? And then, Rogan and Schiffer were kind of talking also about what could be done to, for lack of a better term, better market capitalism to folks.
Okay.
Well, I think that's one thing that the conversations that we're having here, that aspect can't be ignored, because there's some really important issues. With what happened to some of the craft breweries recently, that was, they've suffered because of a lack of a free market, because of regulation by government. You're seeing some of the craft breweries to where 1/3 don't think they'll make it 3 to 4 months. Another third thinks by the end of the year they're going to be out of business.
Yeah.
We're looking at, in a year from now, they're saying that possibly 14% may survive.
Wow.
All because of the government coming in and telling them how they have to run their business.
Well, all because the government came in with a flat rule saying if you serve just this percent of alcohol to food,
right,
done, you can't open.
Right.
Now, notwithstanding the fact that there's a difference between a craft brewery and a nightclub or anything else going on, they just made a blanket rule to all establishments.
Right. And so there's a place called Deacon Baldy's off of FM. It's on 1488. And they, it's basically like a food truck park with taps for a bunch of different types of beer. So the food trucks come and they set up, and Deacon Baldy's has all the beer on tap. And then you get your beer, you get whatever food you want from the half dozen or so different food trucks that are on site, and you just have a good old time. It's like going to one restaurant, one pub that has all these different types of menus available to you.
Nice.
And then they also have all the beer, except they're owned differently.
And it's outside, so you're socially distancing.
It's outside.
Wow.
Yeah, you're out in the fresh open air. So you have Deacon Baldy's owned by one guy, and then you have all the different food trucks with their various owners.
Nice.
That means that because of the way it's set up, you have different licensing.
Yeah.
And so Deacon Baldy's, they don't sell food. Now you have them being seen as a place where it's all your sales are alcohol. On paper, yes, all their sales are literally alcohol.
On paper.
Okay. For the locale as a whole, that location, people are buying food and beer. That's why they're there. That's why they're attracted to it. But they get shut down. They're not allowed to open up. So now they're not the only ones affected. Now you also have all those food trucks. Well, people can't come to get the beer. The beer goes with the food.
So now they're not coming at all.
So now their business is down as well. And Steve Toth, a local state rep, made a great point. He asked the owner of Deacon Baldy's, what do you have coming due in the next couple months? He said, my property taxes. So now he's going to have to pay and $50,000 to $100,000 in property taxes being paid to the county for him to be able to keep his property and continue to do
stay
business
closed.
that he's not allowed to open. So no income, huge bill going out.
Yep.
This is literally worse than the Clintons. At least with the Clintons, when it was pay to play, you still got
to play.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I've got a solution for this. I just thought about this. So what we need to do is start a campaign where we go to these craft breweries and we provide them with large bags of frozen pizza rolls. And what they're going to do is they're going to sell them for 1 cent with each beer. So they will now have a 1-to-1 sell of food with beer on paper.
So they did this. A bar in New York City did this.
Really?
Yeah, they just made some chips and they called them Cuomo chips and they started selling them for like $1 or something.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh yeah. And so what do you think the government did? You think they said, well, good, now you're in compliance? Or you think they said, you guys are pretty funny. That's clever. I like it. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they got shut down.
They started pivoting and figure out, well, how are we going to, these guys are finding ways around this. We need to make sure they can't find ways around this. How hard is the government going to try to shut down businesses?
Yeah.
How much effort are they going to go into, whether they realize it or not, whether they say they're doing it or not, they are in effect choosing the winners and losers in business.
Oh, and what I love is that we fostered so much ignorance in this that if you go into the data sets and look at lockdowns versus virus rates, there's little to no correlation.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at tracing, so you can see social distancing versus increase in rates, there's little to no correlation at all. And really, when you look at it percentage-wise, there's even very little correlation between one place being worse than another.
Yeah.
At least on my last check. And so, but we foster so much ignorance is now you've got both sides of the aisle. They're united on something now. And it's just shutting people down for no reason. And I don't know, they're like, well, they're getting around a letter of our law. Well, the spirit of your law was stupid because you said 51% to 49%.
Right.
If you sell this much alcohol to this much food, you can't be open. What kind of ridiculous improvement is that? So in a restaurant, it's safer because it serves 51% food than 49% alcohol. It's safer now.
Yeah. So
thank goodness.
So what? Yeah, I mean, this goes back to what we talked about before, where there was places at a bar and grill, and the bar had to be closed, but the grill could be open, so you and I could have a burger and a root beer, but not a burger and a beer. Because that made sense. So let's back up though, and set aside the how effective that is, and is it safer for it to be 51% versus 49%? Who's making the investment to open up that business?
Yeah.
Who has risked maybe their life savings? Who has poured in their blood, sweat, and tears to establish that business? Who has done all of the research, the labor needed to get that business rolling? Who has offered jobs, employment to people? Who has offered a service to people that want to pay? They're willing to pay the fruits of their labor, trade that in to go have this experience at any bar, whether it's Deacon Baldy's or it's a food truck or wherever it might be. Where does government factor into any of that?
Well, because they're going to, like they've prevented the explosion of crime and the explosion of drugs, they're going to also prevent the explosion of a disease by making a law that they've arbitrarily just drawn the lines on.
Yeah.
Because it's worked so successfully in the past.
Yeah, and you made that you've made that point before about how effective they are in all the things that they do. You know, the poverty rate before the war on poverty, the poverty rate was already going down quite rapidly.
Yep.
And then they announce a war on it. And all of a sudden, hey, look, we're so effective. I mean, you're literally riding the coattails of a trend that was happening without your intervention. And now you're going to go ahead and slap a name on it and say, hey, look what I did here.
Yeah, Tom Woods did something there. I don't know if I can pull it up right now, but he did something just similar this week in one of his newsletters, how to panic people with bad numbers. And he talks about how they utilize, bogus numbers for these things. So like one of the Texas Department of Transportation, or one of their initiatives was going to lower fatal accidents. And they said, hey, look at our first year. We lowered it by like 3.5%. And he says, guess what it was the year before it was created? It was declining 3.5%. He said it already happened. Now look at education. We're struggling now. The Department of Education has an exponentially exploding budget.
Right.
How's that going?
Oh, yeah.
No. So, yeah. And that's the point. That's the point right there, is that we keep going back to this, hey, you're gonna make a rule and fix it. No, it's not. It's not that. And I don't know how we have a rule that says 1% of food and alcohol sales is going to make or break how safe we are in a restaurant or bar, but there's no regulations on how clean to keep a stripper's pole. It's disgusting.
Yeah, that is an excellent point, sir.
There's laws telling me I have to wear a mask. No laws telling me I have to wear underwear.
That is very true.
People don't have to wash their hands after they go to the bathroom. But yet, because I sold one less chicken nugget to my beer ratio, it's dangerous to be here.
Yeah. And I think this is where people need to start backing up and asking themselves. They see this as obviously there's an imbalance there. Whether you're at 49% or 51% for your alcohol to food sales, you see that that's pretty arbitrary. And yeah, if you're going to make a rule or a law, you have to draw the line somewhere. All right, clearly. But let's back up and ask the question about why are we even saying that anyone gets to make a rule or a law? All right.
Yeah, where was the need for that? There wasn't, because they're like, well, our raw numbers are going up. But as a ratio to population, at least the last time I pulled the numbers, and all I did was just put it on density curves, just to see the bell curve where it's at. Well, we're going to have higher numbers in some of the European nations. You know why? We have like 4 or 5 times their population.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, I think also if you're going to have, you need the government, the only role they should be playing in that is that if the business owner says, hey, we have a rule here that we decided we believe the masks are helpful. And if you're going to come in here, you need to be wearing a mask. The only role there for the government is to come in and back up someone's property rights. Hey, you were told to leave because for whatever reason the business came up with, you didn't leave. You need to leave. Or, yeah, you may end up going to jail for criminal trespass. That would be a proper place for the government to step in. Instead, the government's coming in and now they're making it harder for that business to succeed.
But like you said, now we're shutting things down. Everybody's like, oh, well, unemployment's down to 10% now. We're down to a recessionary unemployment. I don't know if you know that.
Excellent.
Yeah. So thank goodness. But once again, what's happening? They're like, it's just these self-fulfilling prophecies. It's cyclical. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you make this claim, you polarize your audience, you identify something that's going to be based on like more tests, or how many positives we have. Well, there's more tests, and then you're able to make rules off of it. So now you've kept your promise that we're going to do something about it. Because at the end of the day, what's going to happen with the virus? What's going to happen with any issue you deal with? It's going to run its cycle. People are going to react, deal with it, hopefully improve it, you hope, but they're going to normalize to it. And at the end of the day, they're going to be like, hey, look, it's like that quote you wrote. Hey, I broke your legs. Here's your crutches. Thanks to me, you can walk.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's self-fulfilling prophecies that that I don't know that people know is going to happen. And what's funny is now you've got everybody on social media. I've listened to people that are conservatives, and I don't know. It gives again that fake aisle. Well, they're both sides of the aisle, and they're like, well, I've heard, I believe after the election this is over. Well, I've heard that this law is because of this, or I heard it because of China. I heard at the end of the day, no one has ever asked the question, hey, do you think they overreacted and screwed up and now don't want to admit to it?
Oh, yeah.
Well, but nobody wants to say anything because now, again, we've so polarized everybody that if you're an anti-masker, or if you ask a question about what that riot was about, or if you ask a question about the effectiveness of what Fauci says, you're a murderer, you're a racist, and you're just ignorant. So everybody's afraid to. So people are now so scared to speak up that they're just going to let their businesses be shut down because they caught America in 100 days without actually willing to critically think, and were able to steamroll over everything without any critical thought.
I think in terms of the business part of it and the economics of it, this is a place where government needs to stand down, step out. They have no right to be involved in that. I think a lot of people will say, well, hey, but that's why we have licensing and regulation and everything. That's right now, it's the worst thing that you can do at any point. That's the worst thing that you can do for business. That's the worst thing you can do for an economy. And so I think that's just one example. And I think there's a lot more. You want to see a society that can actually flourish and grow, open up the economy, free it up, get the government out of there. And I think that's one of the things that we can, in future episodes, I hope we're going to touch on more. I know we're going to. And for anyone that's interested in now, Peter Schiff just did a great job going over all that stuff on Joe Rogan's podcast. He also made a great video back when Occupy Wall Street was a thing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's on YouTube. It's just under 2 hours. And it takes a little bit of patience on the part of the viewer, because what Schiff did was he went down to the protest and he actually had a sign with him that says, I am the 1%. And basically like, let's talk, ask me, whatever. And what he was trying to do was spark conversation.
Right.
And he said on Rogan's podcast, he said he knew he wasn't going to go out there and change the minds of any of the protesters, but he knew the video was going to go up to be shared. So that was going to be a means of teaching economics, not necessarily to the people out there on the street, because you listen to some of them talk and some of the questions they ask, you realize you're not teaching them anything.
Yeah. Willful ignorance.
Some willful ignorance, some maybe a mental health issue going on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so it will just, protests and will attract all sorts of people.
Yeah.
You're gonna attract your genuinely concerned folks who just want to be active and work towards something they feel is meaningful. You're gonna attract the people that just want to try to cause more havoc and chaos, and you're gonna attract the people that are attracted to drama. And maybe it's because the TV told them to, maybe it's because their cat told them to. Yeah, there ain't no telling with some of them. But what he does throughout that video is he has people are coming up and asking him questions, and they're all starting from this false premise because they were told that capitalism is bad, that the owners of businesses that are extremely wealthy, the 1%, got that way just by screwing people over, and they have no idea what true free market capitalism is. And so it was a great opportunity for him to explain that. And now whether people are going to have an honest conversation and admit their ignorance, maybe not likely face to face, but hopefully the people sitting at home watching it, they're going to be able to learn something that maybe they didn't know before.
Yeah. And that's the thing is you said it's 2 hours and patience on the viewer. That's the problem, is that for people that listen here or elsewhere. It's people who are hungry and want to listen somewhere else.
Yeah.
Now that we're getting past the introductions of what we do and we start getting into the meat of things in our podcast, what we've found, and through several studies, even on social media, I have one that's really great. It tells you even what time to post what type of topic,
Yeah.
and it's statistically sound. We find that it's getting people into the conversation is the hard part. That is the crucial thing for all this solution finding, is getting people into the depths of becoming well equipped with valuable knowledge, deeper knowledge, not just drowning in a sea of 1 inch, shallow knowledge or echo chamber knowledge, but getting into the real meaningful things so that we can do that. And I don't know, you look at some girl singing or putting on makeup on YouTube and immediately gets like 2 million views. You look at something like his video or going into that, I'm sure there's a far less amount of views on it, because it takes time, it takes effort, and we've raised generations to be Burger King generations. I want it my way right away.
So apparently he's heard back from a lot of people that really they changed their views based off of that video.
That's excellent.
I think there's actually a lot of people out there that are wanting to learn. There's a lot of people out there that are hungry for knowledge. They realize they're being sold a load of crap and they want something different. And it's kind of like when sometimes you know something's off and you can't put your finger on it.
Yeah.
And then you find someone or something or some way of articulating it where you realize that this is absolutely right and it makes good sense. And you see that, the beauty with when someone like Peter Schiff explains economics, how to be successful in economics, you realize, okay, well, the dude is he's part of the 1% and probably knows what he's talking about. And then he explains it in a way that you realize it has nothing to do, if you want to come to the table honestly about it, it has nothing to do with him, just the benefits that he's reaped from it. And he tells every one of those people out there, and you get the sense that the guy's genuine about it. He's not arguing for free market capitalism for his benefit. He wants the same thing that those people want, the people out there protesting. He says, no, your protests are pointing at the wrong people. Don't be upset at Wall Street, the ones with the power, that you should be on Pennsylvania Avenue in D.C. protesting there. That's where the issues are. They're protesting crony capitalism, which is that you have the government working with big business and deciding the winners and losers in that. And the government creating a source of ways where you don't actually have a very free and open market. And so that's where the protests ought to be directed. You take out the government's play in all that, now you see room for others to start to grow. You see room for everyone to have a chance. You take out things like the minimum wage. One thing I learned from watching that podcast was I had always, if I was going to argue against a minimum wage, I'd say, well, it hurts the employer because now he has to pay so much money to a worker. He has less money to use for his business, to grow his business and things like that. What Schiff pointed out was it actually hurts the unskilled worker more than it hurts the business, because if I'm the business owner, well, now I have to pay you $10 an hour, but you, because you're unskilled, can only produce $9 an hour worth of skill and profit, then I'm probably not going to hire you. So now who gets hurt from that? And it's not the business person, because if they bend that and now they hire the person that produces $9 an hour when they need $10 an hour, now what happens to the business? Business goes under, everybody loses.
Yeah.
Man, that was such a simple way of it seems so simple now, but okay, I think if that is true, and you'd be hard pressed to show me something contrary to that, that's important. And you have people protesting for a minimum wage. It's like they're demanding that some sort of ceiling be put above their head.
Yeah, and that's the thing is Bernie found that out, and his staffers, I believe, when
Yeah.
they called him out, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll need to pay them $15 an hour. By the way, I'm cutting your hours in half
Yes.
because we're gonna be like Denmark."
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I mean, and so we go back in this issue, economics, the race issue, other things. You know, that's the problem. Is that's where I put the local community on call.
Right.
So who runs your local churches? Local community people.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that I've
Yeah.
ever seen make a difference. That's also been the ones that I've also seen do nothing and worry about how the Tithe Basin storefront building is maintained.
Right.
Can't do that. You got to make a difference. How about your local school board and school district administrations?
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. That's community members too. Why are you allowing the watered down or the marginalization or even the distracting curriculum in? Go
Right.
deeper.
Right.
Challenge it. Don't let that in. Make a difference so that you're teaching kids and challenging it. So again, we have to take that ownership that, yeah, we have a lot of people ignorant and don't even know what they're protesting, or they'll just say, hey, that's wrong. Cool. How do we fix it? I don't know.
Someone else does it. Not me.
Someone else, that's their job. You know, I hate to say this, but at one point being a full-time minister, that's what you are in the church. You are being paid so that you can go be the obedience. You can
Yeah.
be the fixer. You can be that because, well, that somebody else does that. And that mentality is what you see driving. If it's in a place that's noble like a church, service, then think about what it's going to be like out on the protest field out there. It's somebody else needs to fix it. I'm just mad. Okay, well, nothing's going to happen now because you did nothing. You
Right.
offered nothing. You contributed nothing. You articulated nothing, and you innovated nothing.
But you demanded a whole heck of a lot more than
Demanded
nothing.
a lot.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. I demand Twinkies and Ho-Hos. That doesn't happen. My wife makes me eat healthy. And because at the end of the day, that's my responsibility to make better choices with what I do. And we joke around. I can be a smart aleck all day long about it, but we do have to come back into actual education.
Mm-hmm.
We have to actually give usable information. I would love if they would teach algebra over personal finances so that it would be useful to people. The concepts of why do I move this from here to here? Because that's accounting. And here's how you're going to use that. I would love to see these types of things tied in so that way when you finally get to where you have to extrapolate all these things into understanding a huge, complex economic issue, you understand the interplay between social dynamics, political dynamics,
Right.
the psychology behind an issue that all funnel into different ideologies and camps of economics. And, go up to somebody on a college campus and say, hey, what school of economic thought are you? Austrian?
Yeah.
What?
Yep. Absolutely.
What's your major? Psychology?
Yeah.
Underwater basket weaving, these are the types of majors we offer now. And these folks, the interplay between the different sciences are lost because we haven't even covered the basics.
Right. Right. And like I was mentioned earlier, I was talking to a lady from Boston this morning, and she's an older lady, and she's almost old enough to be my grandmother. So, she harkens back to a time that was even different than what we remember from our childhood, which is very different than what we see now. But she was, complaining about, the kids today and the lack of manners and respect, and there's no accountability. But I think that anytime that conversation or that point is made, you got to go back to the parents. What are the parents of today doing? Because that's their responsibility.
Yeah.
We can complain all that we want, but if we're not willing to make the effort towards making the changes that we want to see happen and affecting what's within our little realm, then we best just keep our mouths shut.
Yeah, and we're into the point where the idea of passing on trades and apprenticeships, that's lost for most people. You have to go find a stranger and sign up
Right.
if you even can find an apprenticeship program now. Much more passing on family identity,
Yeah.
culture, passing on previously learned knowledge. I mean, not to pick on my family at all because we had our own set of issues, but I grew up having zero financial knowledge at all. Thought I was so confident, and I think the less we know, the more confident we can be. You know, I mean, think about it. Ignorance breeds confidence in a loud voice.
Yes, it does.
So I was super confident. And I remember when I met my wife at the time. By the way, she was not my wife when I met her. I think I should point that out. But I met this lady that was so far out of my league. To this day, I still don't know what she sees in me.
None of us do.
I know, right? So y'all just keep praying for me. And we're dating, and obviously she's just doing phenomenal, going to school, has her own apartment, doing everything financially at 19. You know, I was just a year ahead of her. Bumbling through paycheck to paycheck. And by the time we get married, it finally occurs to me that I am really lacking in some areas that I probably should have already had figured out. And why is that? It was never passed on to me. These things,
Right.
like any of it, it was just taken for granted. I remember getting my first checkbook and saying, "Do you know how to fill out a checkbook?" Well, what's an ignorant young man going to say? Yeah, of course I do.
What am I, a moron?
Yeah. So
As a matter of fact,
as a matter of fact, you were the
I
poster
still
child.
resemble that remark.
And so it was tossed to me. And sure enough, soon I was buying $33 sodas. You know why? They were $1
yeah.
each plus a $32 overdraft charge. And so it was a huge strain on us beginning because it just, the concepts weren't there. I was completely ignorant. Now, what I could have done is just said, I know what I'm talking about, and just doubled down. Or I could have been like, I need to man up and learn what it's going to take
Right.
to contribute here where I need to. So that's one thing we don't do anymore. We don't put the solution on the person. We don't do that. That's the biggest problem I have when I hire somebody or if I have somebody come to me is say, hey, I found this problem. And I intentionally create awkward silence every time. I just look at them expecting the solution after that. And when they're like, well, that's all I got. So what are we going to do about it? I don't know. I was telling you the problem. There's lots of problems out there. Any schmuck can find a problem. What are we going to do about it that's going to fix it?
Mm-hmm.
That's our job. That's what we get paid for. Well, that's what I'm supposed to be for my family. It's what I'm supposed to be in my friend network. It's supposed to be in my church and my community as the solution finder. So I'm not going to go find my neighbor, my elderly neighbor falling down in the yard and go up to him and say, hey, you fell down. Oh, thanks a lot, Captain Obvious. Really appreciate it.
Yes.
No,
Very
I'm going to offer a solution in whatever way that I can. And we don't have to be perfect at it. But all this demonstrating and rioting and all this without saying, here's the solution, and just saying somebody else needs to come up with it. Oh my gosh, we're going to become indicted and imprisoned by our own laziness. And,
Right.
And so I guess going back to the whole economic thing that Schiff said is, I applaud you for taking time to listen and delve into the cause and effect balance of these things. And especially with the things you are interested in, like behavior psychology and all that, you can appreciate now the dynamics and the interplay between the sciences of how you arrive to the cause and effects that affect these things, especially when you go on a whole scale of a macro economy. But I guess the thing is we're back to that heart issue again. We're back to that. How are we going to convince a generation to say, you are the solution finders?
Right.
Not somebody else, not some elite class of people who won a popularity contest and sit in DC. You are the solution finders. You make it happen.
I think that's scary to some people to be you're the one supposed to find the solution. Like, oh crap, me? Yes, you. And we have a neighbor. He's a Vietnam vet, retired cop. And he comes up and he says that they wanted to hire my son to go do some yard work. Go around their place picking up all the fallen limbs and sticks and pine, all the stuff that dulls lawnmower blades. And he said, we'd pay him for it. And I said, well, I've got no problem with him doing the work, but the pay, I think at some point it's kind of what you should do for your neighbor.
Yep.
Like when I was voluntold to go shovel the driveway for the widow that lived next door to us when I was in high school. That was there's no money involved in that, nor should there have been. So I said that to my neighbor. He says, "No, if he does it, I'll pay him. He does a man's work. I'll pay him a man's wages."
Nice. That's a good lesson right there in and of itself.
So I said, so I'm clipping tree limbs and branches on our property yesterday, and I had my son go around and pick them all up and cart them down to where we're gonna stack them. And I said, before we started that, I said, you know, our neighbors, they asked me if you'd, they mentioned possibly hiring you to go do this on their property. And I told them that whole thing. And even what he said about does a man's work, I'll pay him a man's wages. And he's kind of looking at me a little bit hopeful. I said, you think you're up to that? He stood up a little bit taller, a little bit straighter. He nodded, big smile on his face.
Nice.
And sometimes people need to know that you're capable of doing whatever this thing. Here's a little bit of a challenge for you to rise to. Now, is it a difficult task? No. You know, sometimes for a kid, just doing something that is more than going out and playing and goofing off with your friends, it might seem like a little bit of a daunting task. That's just because you don't really want to. But I decided to try to make it to something. Hey, do you think you're up to it? So then he gets to go do it, and now he gets to have the satisfaction of knowing, hey, I was up to the task.
Yeah.
How many of us have stuff like that every single day? It's even little stuff every single day. You know, it can be a matter of spending the extra time with your kids to make sure that they've got the attention and affection that they need from their parents. It can be something as simple as taking the trash out for your elderly neighbor. All these little things that can be done. It used to be that churches were the ones that provided what we now call welfare.
Yeah.
The churches used to take care of that. It was charity decades ago, and now we don't have that anymore. And now there's literally churches, when families come to the church board or elder board, whoever it might be, at some churches, when the families come and say, look, financially, we're hurting. We need some help. And the churches will be like, well, here's some government documents you can fill out to get some government aid.
I know. It drives me nuts.
I mean, it's sickening.
Because somebody else is going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And you know what? Your small businesses who could be making the same things, whether it be talking about economic help, philanthropy, racial bias recognition in hiring, these types of things can make the difference. But again, it's put off.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else do it. And again, this is the same. And what it ends up turning to is, like you said, the government documents, the ones that still can't decide who a human is.
Right.
Still,
yep.
I don't even know that the government, I think it was a reluctancy at a government level to recognize Native Americans as citizens when you see the way it unfolded, when you see the way that anybody that had any kind of minority status was kind of not really held at the same human level. Now, 5 minutes before you exit the womb, we're not sure if you're a person yet. Let's let them make the decisions. Oh man, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, that 1% ratio of food to alcohol is going to kill you with the coronavirus. So be careful.
Right.
So this is what we turn to. And I have to say, I say all that to answer your question. When you talk about it seems scary to be the ones that have to make the difference. I don't think so. I don't look at it that way. I think if we're lazy and we're accustomed to wanting to shuck the responsibility,
mm-hmm.
then it threatens that.
Yes.
But
yes, exactly.
But I think it's far less scary to say, hey, I'm going to make an effort here to make a difference in my area, rather than going, hey, let's see what Washington comes up with. That is terrifying.
Well, I think I don't think that people look at it that way, because I don't think that they're encouraged. I think they're actually encouraged to look at, this is what we do as a people. We look at the news, we look at Washington. Oh, we're mandated to wear a mask, so we're going to have to go ahead and wear masks. There's an order from the governor saying that you have to wear a mask. That means it's a law. No, actually, it doesn't mean it's a law.
What's the Constitution?
Oh yeah, I had a lady yell at me, "Sir, where's your mask? Why are you not wearing a mask? I have a mask." It was around her neck, not covering her face at all. But she's flipping out. Don't you know there's an order from the governor? And what's your point? Do you look to the government to tell you every single thing that you should do throughout the day? Or do you go out and live your life? If you're going out and living your life in a way that takes care of your neighbor and everyone else around you, then we really don't have an issue.
Right.
If you're looking for how you should act, should be, sent down from Caesar, and he's going to decide what's a moral way for you to live your life. And the same people that have lied to you time again, those are the ones you're gonna wait for them to tell you the truth. I mean, then there is no hope. But like when I tell you that there's people that Peter Schiff has had tell him, hey, I watched this whole video, almost 2 hours long of you talking to these people, and some of them, man, they're so difficult to listen to because they're so, you're waiting for them to even get to a question that they're asking this guy, and they're like giving like their whole life story, or they're talking, not making any sense.
Completely irrational.
Yeah, but you're waiting for that gem. So there's enough people have watched that, and they're just waiting for that gem of actual knowledge and a good interaction. And that's what even he had with Rogan. Rogan was asking some really good questions, and he had some really good responses to what Schiff had to say. And he actually was you could tell he was letting go of some of what he came to the table with, realizing what he says makes sense. And you know what? If this is the desired outcome that I have, yeah, I think that actually does get us to that. That actually is a more compassionate, a more humane way to treat people. That's a better way of doing business. And then, so now you have someone able to step up and say, okay, I didn't know everything beforehand. Now I've got a little bit more information, and I need to change the way that I do things. Well, that's not government. That was two people talking. And hopefully with the downloads that Rogan gets, that's a whole lot more people listening.
Yeah, and that's it. He's using his, and I love that Rogan has definitely done some changing as he's interviewed these people over the last few years. And that's what's going to happen. The more we expose ourselves to facts and people's experiences, we are going to change and develop. And that's the whole point, is if we continue to outsource our decision making, then we're never going to grow. We're never going to develop. We're not going to have anything to pass on to our kids. We'll have no character left. We'll have no experience left. We'll have no lessons learned. We'll have nothing genuine to pass on to our kids because we abandoned it all for the sake of laziness.
Right. I made a decision about a year and a half ago, a little bit more, to make a change at work that was going to impact my family in a positive way. And one of the things I had to ask myself, it wasn't a change that I wanted to make, but one of the things I had to ask myself was, is this in 30 years, what will I wish I had done more of? I wish I had stayed on the path I was on. That would be work that was more enjoyable and satisfying, but it took me away from my family more. Or will I wish I had been more available to my wife and my kids?
Yes.
And I think that made it made the decision much easier, because there's someone else, when deciding where you need to put your efforts towards, if there's something that needs to be done and you're the only one that can do it, that's probably what you need to do. If someone else can come in and do the job that you're doing, then that's not a big deal if you're the one doing it or not. If someone else can come in and do it just as well, but you say, no, it needs to be me. Okay. Is that for others or is that for you?
Yeah. And so many people have traded their home lives and marriages and relationship with their kids away for the sake of that kind of a reward. But, ultimately, every man and woman has to count the cost for what their choices are and what's meaningful and what they want to do. And again, that will never be legislated. You want change, and it's kind of like there's this huge movement in America against human trafficking. America is one of the largest consumers.
Right.
Do what you value then.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, the outrage that people have had over athletes wearing BLM or social justice warrior logos on their jerseys, and they didn't let Tebow do this, but now they're letting these people do it. I can't stand it. So what are you doing Sunday? Well, I'm going to be watching the game.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm doing nothing
I see a bit of a disconnect here.
as long as I'm entertained.
Yeah. You know, it's like what is it? Bread and circuses. That's what the Roman government used to make sure there's plenty of that for the people. As long as they're entertained, perhaps there won't be an uprising.
And you know what? Unfortunately, there's nothing new under the sun, and history will be allowed to repeat itself if people so choose.
Well,
I've always said stupid is a choice to my kids because, we can be ignorant. There are so many things I'm confident I'm ignorant of right now.
yep.
But I have to be willing to learn. Once I choose willful ignorance, I've chosen to be stupid about something. And that's where I'm at, is I've never thought somebody just making a wrong decision was stupid or making a comment that they didn't know better. But when you know right and wrong, when you have a personal responsibility, you choose not to, that bothers me. When we have a generation that would rather protest those who are working and do nothing, that bothers me, because now where's your ownership to make this a better place? And there's not any. And so I think that's where there's the disconnect too, is that even if we go and find a protest that's making a good point, you're still not going to have any credibility. Let's say you go to Wall Street again and you're protesting there, and you're protesting something that had some wholesome, valuable change you want to make. All I have to do, let's say I'm a businessman that works down there, I walk outside, I could walk across and say, so what have you guys done in your career to change this? Nothing. Zero credibility now.
Yep.
I'm out.
Yep.
Moving on, because
Right.
you've had no ownership to make a change. Why should anybody else?
Right.
And protesting and rioting, pointing out the problem, pointing at my neighbor who fell down and telling him, hey, you fell down. None of those are the solution. Just coming back to going, I will be the source of change. And when you look at it like that, it's not as scary anymore. It just makes you sacrifice your laziness. It
Yep.
makes you sacrifice your comfort and your entertainment to say, I'm going to have enough of an ethical stand here that I'm not going to just do nothing. And, I'm the same way. All these people pissed off at the NFL because of that. I'm like, well, that's fantastic. If it's that important to you, what are you doing in your brand new jersey?
Right.
Nothing. You're doing nothing.
Well, I think that's a good point to wrap it up. There's certainly more to come, and in future podcasts, we'll delve into the details and some more information, stuff that we've been fortunate enough to come across these last several years. It's not something that I grew up knowing. It's not something that I've come up with on my own. This is stuff I've had to learn from a lot of people who have gone before and known a heck of a lot more than I did and than I do. So, that's the goal here, right? Have the conversations that enough people aren't having, and hopefully it sparks a whole lot more, not just here between us, not just between anyone that we might bring on the podcast, but in the maybe online and some of the message threads, the comment threads, and then just anyone that takes in any of this stuff. Hopefully it's raising some good questions that people can go back and say, start having these conversations with folks around them and realize, you know what, I thought I understood this. No, I didn't understand it all, and need to start looking at things differently and acting differently as well.
And I bet we come across the same thing in our life as we go through this, is we're going to learn some things and change our outlook. And especially as we dig into some of the books and stuff we're going to dig into as well. So good stuff.
Yep.
And one of the only free and mask-free environment pubs that you can find in the area.
Where liberty is still alive and well.
As the sun was setting o'er the bright meadows of Sherman, a rebel hand set the head